Okay, well, I didn't get that on camera, so oh well.
I know.
Um,
Holly's like, when you said, can we do five? Holly's like, just ask her if she's going to be ready to fight around five. I go, we're not going to fight. Going to be fine.
we're not gonna fight. We're not gonna fight. I would really like to show that people don't have to fight. Like it would be so nice if
Oh, yeah.
everyone would learn that they don't have to fight. Okay. Welcome to Pros Talking Pros, everybody. We are Troy and Stacey. I don't know. I don't have a quippy. My brain
I
is
don't have a
fried.
quippy thing.
Do we have a
Yeah.
quippy anything? I have quippy
I,
nothing. Well,
I
we're
got
just
nothing.
the
Yeah.
illustrious and the dull. Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
that. So
Clearly.
anyway,
It's hard to tell
yeah,
which is which. It's hard
we
to tell
don't
which is
we
which.
we
We
may
don't know.
change places throughout
Change
this
roles.
entire, yeah, exactly,
It's
thing.
fine.
But today we're going to talk about something just because I know it's something that's near and dear to both Troy and my hearts, and I want to preface this whole discussion with the whole idea of this, and that is we don't talk about these things to be controversial, but we do broach controversial topics because we feel like we can show you guys how they are important to bettering society to talk about these things and have conversations. But also, you should know Troy and I lean little opposite in political spectrums, and you should know that just because I want you to know Troy is one of my very best friends. So when I tell you that we lean in opposite directions, sometimes you need to know that it's okay when we don't agree, and we are totally fine with not agreeing with other people. And so you don't have to completely agree with us when we talk about these things and when we talk about some of the things we talk about in the publishing world, but you should know that we are totally okay with that. And that is something that we are going to talk about today. And that is letting people have opinions and free speech and why it's so valuable in this country. There is a lot happening in the world today. And I mean, just was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago, there was this huge march in the UK for free
Hmm.
speech and for, the immigration policies. And there was a couple of things that they wrapped up into it, but um, they they are very, very upset with some of the freedoms um, that have been removed from their society. And I think that it's
Hmm.
something that in America we should be very, very careful about allowing us to slip into that area, and banning books and some of these other things, both left and right, that people do politically and say to each other that
Hmm.
jeopardize free speech. And I think that it's something that as publishers and authors we should be very, very protective of. And I think that more than anything, it's about allowing people to have differing opinions on one side of that coin. The other side of the coin of that free speech is to allow yourself to be open enough to listen to the
Hmm.
opposing, and actually don't be afraid to have conversations with the opposing side, because that is when you can come to understandings, empathy, and agreements that are good for
Hmm.
everybody. And I think that
Yeah.
I think our country has forgotten that a little bit. So
Well, yeah. I think there's a lot of things. So compromise has become a dirty word, and it has
mm,
changed to be where someone that disagrees with me is not just someone who disagrees with me, but they're evil because
right.
they have a different opinion. Okay, so there's clear problems with that, right? But um, so first of all, one thing I want to do is be sure we define
Yeah,
like
let's define.
freedom of speech and define book banning, which is a form of censorship or lack of freedom of speech.
Lack of freedom of speech,
So
right?
the thing that freedom of speech is it is freedom from the government specifically telling you
Mhm.
what you can and cannot say.
Right.
So I see people all the time that talk about, well, this particular platform is not allowing me to exercise free speech. Facebook is censoring things. Okay, Facebook may seem like the government, but they are not, right? That is a private company. They can set whatever rules in place they want for what happens on their platform. It's the same with any other social media platform or any business for that
Mm-hmm.
matter. Now, what that means to them is that they are free to make whatever rules that they want to make, but they're also not free from the consequences of that. If you allow certain types
Exactly.
of hate speech on your platform because you've taken a stance that we just allow everything, well, then there are potential consequences for that as a private company that the government does not face. But the government allowing everyone to have a voice is the right of free speech. What's happening in Great Britain and other countries in Europe is that the government has said these are certain things you can't say.
Right.
And
And
so
some
the
of those
people are
things,
saying, yeah, critique of the government, critique of law enforcement,
mhm,
um,
critique of
things like that,
teachers.
which is what we
Hmm.
need, to be
Yeah.
frank. Like we need criticism of we need politicians to criticize other politicians,
We
right?
need
So
people to criticize people. We need people. We need
yeah,
this. We're as
so
editors. We're the master critiquers, right?
yeah,
Like
and if you
that's why
can't
people
take
pay us.
critique as an author, you're in the wrong freaking business. Because
Right.
it's all of you're going to get critique left, right, and center.
And
Some
reviews
of it
and
that you
all of
don't
it.
want, some of
Yeah.
it that you want. And it doesn't matter whether you want it or not, you're still going to get it. But that's because the government has not told people that they are not free to say whatever they want about your book. Now, if they say false things about your book and they create slander and libel, well, those are consequences of free speech gone wrong, right? But
Hmm.
it's not a violation of their free speech,
Right.
right? If I tell them, please don't say that about my book because it's not true, and they say it anyway, and it affects my sales, and that has legal consequences, then I can legally sue them, right?
Right.
But that's not impinging on their freedom of speech. That's me saying, legally, you caused me damage with your speech. You're still free to say it, but you're not free from the consequences that come out of
Right.
saying that.
And that's
So,
and that's something that we should point out in terms of like the rule of law. Like a rule of law is basically just when people and the political government and government as a whole and law legal um entities all come together and understand that individuals, institutions, and everybody are all under scrutiny of and under the umbrella of following the adjudicated laws in that country, right? And that's rule of
mhm,
law. Like rule of law means that we all are accountable. It means that we all understand the laws that are invoked in that place that you live, and that we all have equal application to those laws. We all have equal access to the laws that protect us, right? That's why we have three forms of government in this republic that we live, not democracy, republic, where they are going to check on each other. It's called checks and balances. We have these three separate from each other ruling portions of our government that help us keep things in check. That makes America very, very unique,
mhm.
because not every country has this. In fact, we're one of the I think one of two that have this. I think just something that you should be aware of. The First Amendment does not protect, which is freedom of speech, right? It does not protect incitement. Like Troy was saying,
Mhm.
speech that is intended to incite or cause harm can be prosecuted, can be legally
Mhm.
quashed, right? So if it's leading to a lawless kind of incitement, like, I mean, everybody says that Trump like incited like January 12th, right? Or whatever that was.
January 6th. Yeah, yes.
Thank you. So so that's why everyone's so upset, because Trump, they said, and I'm not going to say one way or the other, but they say that that's what happened is he incited that incident. And so legally, if they prosecuted him for that, they would have to prove in a court of law that he in fact did that. If you create, if you threaten somebody, if you threaten the life of somebody, if you make racial, I think hate speech can be
Hate speech.
prosecuted.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Defamation, like Troy said. Um,
Defamation and slander, two
yeah,
different things, but yes.
child pornography is actually not considered protected under free speech because it causes harm to consenting children.
Hmm.
And fraud. Anytime you commit fraud with your speech, again, that is not legal. But free speech, what it does is it protects us from being able to have these without fear of being prosecuted, these conversations, right? To be able to
Hmm.
have conversations, come to the town center, town square, and actually have these conversations and be able to improve as a society. What I think we've lost in this country is the ability to understand that conversations and debate they're a vital part of improving as a whole. And
Hmm.
when you try to say one way or the other, you don't agree with me, so therefore you're evil, or you don't agree with me, so therefore I'm not listening to you, or I'm just going to unfollow you because you have a different opinion than I do. What you're doing is you're creating for yourself, and this is what I think the problem is with a lot of people, is they create for themselves in their algorithms a bubble of people that are only saying and repeating the same thing
Hmm.
that they're saying. And so they think that they are the majority. And they
Hmm.
and they think that they're everybody believes the same thing they believe without realizing that the algorithm that they're in is preventing them from seeing the opposing opinions and therefore understanding and coming to a common ground with those people because they think that they're the enemy because the people that they're listening to are telling them everybody else is the enemy. And this is
Right.
happening on both sides. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying this is happening on both
It's
sides.
happened on both sides. It's an echo chamber and it creates
Mm-hmm.
confirmation bias. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that everybody believes the same thing I believe because I'm operating inside this echo chamber where every voice that I hear says the exact same things that I say. And that's why I want to be very careful personally not to block those conversations, not to avoid having those conversations. And like I saw a post the other day and somebody said, I'm a liberal, but I want you to understand what being a liberal means to me and
Mm-hmm.
listed these things and said, I'm tired of being told what I believe because I say I'm
I'm a
liberal,
liberal. Mm-hmm.
right? Or I'm a conservative. And then there's assumptions that people make about what that means to you.
I think if people stopped saying those things and just started saying what they believed, I think that most of us would find that we're all on the same team. Like, I
Because
really do. I really
I
do.
really do. I think that, and now the other thing is, there is also what we call a loud majority. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
loud minority,
Loud
loud
minority.
minority.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is there's extremists on both sides, and those are the ones that are the loudest. But when you sit down and talk with someone, like I have a good friend in New York he was a forensic pathologist. He did all kinds of things in New York. It's really cool. But for him to get a weapon, even as pretty much a member of law enforcement in New York, was extremely challenging for him, even to be able to carry a handgun in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Well, because carrying the reasons for carrying a handgun in New York City and the reasons for carrying a handgun in Idaho are
Are
two
completely
completely
different.
different reasons. Having a long gun in Chicago means I'm going up in a tower and I'm going to start taking people out. Having a long gun
Wow.
in Boise or in Idaho means I'm hunting elk because I'm hungry, right?
Right.
There's a huge difference between those two. So when we sit down and have conversations like that, I can agree with him on certain aspects of gun control, even when I disagree with him on certain aspects of gun control, because really we're saying the same things. We're just from two completely different cultures within the same country,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to him, going for a 5-hour drive sounds like insanity. For me, sitting in a taxi for 45 minutes to go 8 blocks in New York City
Sounds
is insanity,
insane. Yeah,
right?
that would be
Like,
insanity for
but
me too.
those two things are both can be okay and
Yeah.
both can be true. Like, we don't have to. The problem is the divisions that we have are for the most part caused by extremism of taking a something that's probably a good belief and
Hmm.
taking it to an extreme
Hmm.
and never coming to the middle. And I always like to use the example of, Gingrich and Tip O'Neill did not agree when they were in Congress.
No.
They were polar opposites, but they would go after their heated debates on the congressional floor and go and have drinks together almost every night. And the reason was the real answer is what's a dirty word now, which is compromise. Like, if you do not compromise, you can't get
Or
anything done.
or just decency. Honestly, I mean, it's just
And just being
decency.
decent,
Because I
you
mean,
know?
like I said before, Troy and I have like we have some religious beliefs that are probably like we're in different places, but I will say a lot of times we're very, very similar. Even
Hmm.
though I'm a card carrying Christian and go to a church well, not every Sunday, but I go to church pretty frequently. And Troy doesn't. But we could have these conversations where I can completely see his perspective and understand it, and he can see mine. And honestly, it doesn't change our relationship or our friendship in any way, shape, or
Hmm.
form. I can respect him for his beliefs, and there's no it's my way or the highway. What I find really interesting, just to take this, like you said, to the extreme. I remember it was some years ago, and I know he doesn't watch my channel, so I'm not worried about him hearing this, but some years ago I had a cousin that had joined a church, got baptized into that church. His brother was so angry that he wasn't joining his church that he completely turned his back on that relationship and stopped talking to him. And I don't know if to this day he has talked to him. And it's been like almost 12 to 15 years, I think, ago.
Hmm.
What's amazing to me is some of the things that this brother then started saying to the rest of the family, which was, if you don't go to my church in Minnesota, in this Minnesota congregation that I go to, then you're all going to hell. And here's where I want to kind of take this conversation next is I, as a critical thinker, thought to myself, what idiot would believe that in a heartbeat? I mean,
Hmm.
someone tell me about a God in this world, of this world, in any religion. Let me just ask this, that would limit themselves to a congregation of maybe, if it's a big church, maybe 500. Like,
Yeah.
who, and say that the rest of you are going to hell? What? How, what about the rest of the population of the world? What about the guy in Africa who is taking care of his family? What about the bushman in Australia? What about, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. If you
Yeah.
know how big this world is, then you would think that that doesn't make sense. What I'm trying to say now is this: critical thinking skills kind of seem to be going away by the dodo.
Hmm. Well, part of it is because I was raised in a Christian home, Christian education, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the most important thing that education really taught me how to do was how to learn, how to research and learn, and how to think critically,
Think.
right? So,
Mhm.
which even though in some ways that's not really what that group and that church wanted, right? Because when
Right.
you thought critically, it was very similar to the Minnesota thing. Okay, if I'm not in this tiny little narrow band, I'm sunk. Okay, well there's lots of ways that doesn't even make sense. I'm not going to go down that road because we can have a
Right.
completely
That's a
completely
totally different. Yeah.
full on discussion about that because well anyway, I'll
It
mention
just
it in a
doesn't
minute.
make
But
sense.
anyway, it just doesn't make sense, right? Because the critical thinking questions that need to be asked are questions that are not even being asked. Like, that's
Right.
not the question that's being asked. The question is, are you a member of this particular thing? Are you doing these particular things? Are you following this particular formula? And as you all know, like when I talk about publishing and stuff like that, I'm like, there is no
There's
formula.
no formula.
Well, here's the thing about life. There is no formula. Like, we don't know the perfect way. And the reason religion requires faith is because you don't know. Now, you can tell me, you can come at me and argue that you do know. That's fine. I'm
That's
happy to have
fine.
that conversation with you. But even if you do, even if you're absolutely certain, like there's a whole lot of different choices out there in the world. It's not that simple.
You just
But
have to think.
when it comes to opinions and to thinking, like we saw, I mean, one of the reasons we're talking about this is because of the people talking about Charlie Kirk and that he just got what he deserved. And I'm like, if that is not true, because
If
it has never been true that two wrongs make a right. So even if he was absolutely 100% toxic, wrong, horrible person, someone murdered him.
right.
That's breaking a different law, and
Mhm.
neither one of those things have anything to do with free speech, except to say that Charlie has an absolute right to say whatever he wants to say. Wrong, negative, bad, whatever, as long as it's not insightful, it doesn't break those things that we're
Right.
talking about,
Which
right?
and that's
And
the thing. So but that's the thing.
yeah,
So people were saying that he was right, that he was bigoted, that he was a Nazi. What's really kind of amazing to me is the things that they were saying about him. I've heard several from even from opposing, like I can't tell you how many people from a different, totally different lifestyle, political spectrum, sexual orientation I have started following because of this very thing. Because everybody who's coming out and being very positive and thinking and talking, I'm like, follow, follow, follow. I'm like letting people know this is amazing. This is what we need to do. And if this is the only thing that Charlie Kirk's death does is open up the conversations,
hmm.
okay, at least because I think he would be okay with that. I think he would be okay
Well,
with that.
yeah, because from some of the clips that I saw of the guy, like I had never listened to the guy much before until this happened,
I
right?
only,
I'm
there was a
like,
few,
he
I'll
was
tell you
kind of
about
like
that
I
one.
knew a name, but he was
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I mean, he was on my radar, but not on my radar. You know what I
Right.
mean? But the more I read things about it, first of all, I'd said there's some things that he said that I agree with, some things that I
Some things
disagree
that you,
with, pretty
yeah,
much like everyone else. There's some things I vehemently disagree with that are, I mean, they're clear. They're from his speeches. You can look
mm-hmm.
them up on YouTube. You can listen
Right,
to them, right?
right.
So you can get it from the source that these are the things that the guy said. These are the things that he believes. Some of those things, no. Some of those things, though, yeah. Some of those things, even though I couldn't agree with him, I understood his thinking and his argument.
Or you could come to a reconciliation of going, okay, we can agree to disagree, which is what I
Hmm.
think which is what I think he wanted people to do. But
Hmm.
more than anything, I think the reason he went to college campuses, and you guys can look up the history of universities, and this is why I want to talk about critical thinking here, is because initially the reason schools were even opened up in the beginning of, Socrates and everybody, when they started schools and started universities and started these conversations, is because that's what they were for, is for these
Hmm.
moments for great minds to come together and discuss ideas and see where they took us. They were not
Hmm.
meant to tell you color inside the lines and stay inside these lines and don't go outside these lines, follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. And
Hmm.
what's really, really interesting to me, and I find this interesting, and I mean, this is another rabbit hole we can go down to about the schooling in our country, but it is interesting to me to see how now you go to school and you have to do your math problem this way. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like the new
And
math, like you
the
have to do it
reason
this way.
is
And I'm like, wait,
the reason is we're teaching to a test, not a conclusion.
well, there's that. But what I mean is I
Because
mean, this can go into a big different like way, but I'm just kind of
mhm,
thinking this, if a government or anybody wanted to control a society, let's think about this. If anybody wanted to control a society, there's a couple things that you do to prevent incitement, right? You make your society complacent. And this is what religions do, frankly. I will be very frank with
mm,
you. Religions have always been co-conspirators when it comes to controlling a mob, because they've always been side by side with governments. If you don't believe me, just look it up. But
Read a history book,
read a
maybe.
history book.
I mean, yeah.
But religions are very much part of that process. And what I find is very interesting is that schools have kind of gone right next to those institutions, government,
Hmm.
school, religion. And what's happening is they're taking away the free speech, not free speech, but the critical thinking skills and the ability for people to feel like
Yeah.
they can speak, that they feel like they can challenge, they feel like that like that is being removed from them at a very young age, like a very
Hmm.
young age. Like we're seeing
Oh,
little children,
extremely,
you know,
extremely,
and I'm like,
because this is
wait a
what
minute.
you're taught to toe a line, which is
Right.
not real. And I often say
Mhm.
hypocrisy is something that's taught, because really before free speech, what gets restricted is free thinking. And this is where book banning comes in, is
Right.
because you're not allowed, as a Christian school kid, there were certain books that I was not allowed to read,
Hmm.
which means I read most of them because I was kind of a rebellious
You're a
kid,
rebel. Hmm.
especially as a teenager. And so, what it also meant that was when I graduated high school, I took philosophy of religion at no less than three colleges and got a C in every single class because I argued with every professor,
Good for you.
because every one of them was trying to do one thing, and that was give their particular viewpoint. They were not teaching us to think about the philosophy. They were not teaching us to think about religion. What they were doing was teaching us certain things about religion and spirituality that they believed. So one was an atheist teaching philosophy of religion. Go figure, right? Because he's teaching it from the perspective that none of these things are right, and here's why the philosophy of religion is bunk. And this is why
Right.
Buddhists are bunk. That's why Christians are bunk. That's why everybody's bunk, right? And then there's the ones that says, hey, I am a Bible believing Christian and I'm teaching philosophy of religion. So I'm teaching you this is the correct one and see how wrong all these other ones are, right? And so it wasn't teaching us to think about religion and think about how we felt about spirituality and come to some kind of our own conclusions. What it was you need to come to my conclusion because I'm the professor and I'm right. Now, this is a philosophy
Hmm.
class, right? But that started in
Wow.
math class, science class.
Hmm.
You had two camps of science classes when I was growing up and going
Oh,
to
yeah,
college.
I did
Basically,
too.
you had the Christian stance, so you had the creation theory, and you had the evolution theory, and there was never a merging between the two. And then I would ask questions like, hey, so what does it matter whether God used a microwave or a crock pot to create the world?
Yeah.
Does it matter if it took 7 days or 7 eons? And those were symbolic days in the Bible. What does it matter to the way I'm supposed to live my life today? Because the way I'm supposed to live my life today is to show unreasonable kindness to people, to show
Hmm.
unreasonable love to people that do not deserve it. And if I'm going to follow the basic tenets of many religions around the world, those are the only two things that really matter.
Those are the things that you take with you in this world, right? It's
Those are the only things that those are
relationships
what
and knowledge.
matters in this world.
You die
Yeah.
naked, you were born naked. When you die, you
Right.
guys, all you take with you, no matter what type of religion you believe in, but even if you're reincarnated, the only thing you take with you are your
Hmm.
relationships and your knowledge. That's it. The
Yeah. And
experiences and the
really,
knowledge that you take.
you take
That's
that
it.
with you, but what's important about that is what you left behind. Like, what
Yeah.
knowledge of that did you give away? Why do you think we write? We write to give
Yeah.
away our stories and the things that we know. And not necessarily, some of us don't write to give them away. We write to sell them because we like to eat. But you know what I mean? Like, the
You're
whole
still giving
point
them
is to
away.
share your stories with the world, right? The whole idea of your love and kindness is to share that with the world. If you just bottle it up and only share it with the person next to you, cool for them, I suppose.
Or
But
if you're
there's a
only sharing
whole bunch of people that you're not
or if
touching
you're
that you
only
could.
sharing it, if you're only sharing it with people that think and feel the same way you do, how does that
Hmm.
make how does that exact change?
How does that change the world?
How does that
The
change the
whole
world?
there's the one of the biggest issues around religion, and I will say specifically in the United States, there's other religions worldwide that have similar issues, but specifically in the United States, is that the mission of the church is supposed to be benevolence. We're supposed to be showing kindness. We're supposed to be showing
Hmm.
love. We're supposed to be caring for the widows and the orphans and all that kind of stuff. And people say, well, how would you end welfare? And I'm like, well, if every person that went to church in the United States actually gave 10% of their income, a tithe of their income to the church, and the churches used that in the way
If the
that they were
church actually
supposed
used
to,
it the way they were supposed to.
then welfare programs would go away because no one would go sign up for them because there'd be such
Right.
an abundance coming out of the churches.
Right. That's true.
If Elon Musk gave 10% of his current net worth, we could solve homelessness in the United States.
Hmm.
One dude doing exactly what almost every person that I ask that's a Christian, are you supposed to give 10% of your money to the thing? Yes, I'm supposed to. Do you?
No.
Not really, not on a regular basis. I
Do
get
you
this
want to
is the
know?
reason and
Do you
that
want
and
to
all
know
the things,
why?
you know?
I think that the reason is because we all know that that money's not fully being used the way it's supposed to be
Hmm.
used.
Yeah, I would deliberately, like when I do give charity, I give it deliberately to groups and things that I know are taking action. I want to go up to every church building that I see being built or remodeled or whatever, and just go up to the people leading that church and say, how much of this space is set aside for
Right.
benevolence? How much of this is a homeless shelter? I talked to a friend of mine who is a pastor, and I said, why is your church empty to Monday through Saturday?
Mhm.
I go, it could be a homeless shelter. He goes, well, studies have proven that, if you let people in and it turns into a homeless shelter, that they damage the church. And I go, well, then maybe the problem is the design at the church, not the homeless people. Just saying, if your
Mhm.
church isn't a place that's hospitable to the poor and the elderly and the people you're supposed to be taking care of, then maybe the problem is the way your church is designed, not the people that you're supposed to be taking care of. That become because we put the blame on something else that's entirely not true. Anyway, so this is getting off the topic of freedom of speech,
It's actually, but
except
no,
that
it's thinking. I mean, but that's the thing.
except that the whole
It's
idea is you
thinking.
should be critically thinking like this when someone tells you something. Becca Syme in the writing world often
Hmm.
talks about question the premise. Somebody says, you have to do this. And you say, do I?
Yeah.
Do I have to do this? You should be doing that in other aspects of your life as well. When people tell you this is the way things are, you should say, are they? Is that really the way things are? And maybe you should do some critical thinking, some investigation of your own. And by do your own research, I don't mean go watch YouTube videos by
Oh my
people that
gosh.
share your beliefs.
Yeah, please
That is not
get out of
research.
your algorithms. I can tell you
Visiting the
honestly,
QAnon website is not the way to do research.
it
Neither
was
is
so
watching Fox
funny.
News or CNN.
No,
Either
I
one.
either one.
They're both biased the wrong way. Like and unbiased journalism is extremely hard to come by nowadays. And the reason is, let me just tell you people this, okay? Pay the damn writer.
Hmm.
Nobody
Yeah.
will pay me to do investigative journalism today. I cannot go 9 months and go do an investigation into a politician and come out with a big juicy story at the end of that 9 months and say, ooh, and my boss won't pay me for that. And the reason they won't pay me for that is because people balk at paywalls for newspapers and they don't
Right.
subscribe to them anymore. They're not delivered to their house anymore. And they complain that newspaper websites have too many ads. How is the newspaper supposed to pay the writer to do the journalism that you need to help you critically think?
Hmm.
You're, we're missing a whole thing of like what the point is of journalism. The point of journalism is to hold politicians accountable. The other thing that has to happen, though, is when we do find out bad things about the politicians, we need to react to that news appropriately.
Exactly.
That's the other
Exactly.
thing that's happening. It used to be you write a political thriller, and the big thing was threatening to expose something about the politician. Well, nowadays, something's exposed about the politician. We go, thank God he's a good politician, even
Oh
though
my
he's a horrible
gosh.
person. And we
Yeah.
don't care. Like,
I
we
was
don't
watching
care.
I was watching something the other day. It's completely not even political. It was actually about Johnny Carson, and it
Oh,
was about
yeah.
some of the people that he interviewed, you know.
Hmm.
And I love Johnny Carson. Honestly, he was. I think he generally was a good human, generally, even though
Hmm.
he got married like 50 times, but obviously he wasn't a good husband, but he was probably a good human. From
Maybe he
what
was a
his
great husband and horrible at picking wives. You
could
don't
be,
know.
we don't know.
You don't know.
But he was cute as a button. I loved listening to him laugh. It was one of my favorite things. But anyway, one of the things that he would talk about behind the scenes, never, never in front of, never talked about this stuff publicly. Behind the scenes, he would mention certain people that he did not want to work with. And it was really interesting to me to hear who these people were, because they were people who were usually promoted by the movie studios in such a way that you would think they had spotless character.
Hmm.
Spotless. Some of them were some of my favorite actors. And I did a deep dive when I was like, because again, it's one of those like, is it really? Is it really? So I
Hmm.
did a
Is
deep
that
dive.
really true?
Yeah. And I did a deep dive. And sure enough, some of these characters that Johnny Carson was very, very like, he was like, I don't want to have anything more to do with this person. They were horrible humans. Like, but it was very much kept behind this closed
Hmm.
door. The beautiful thing and the terrible thing about our society, it's a double-edged sword here, is that with everybody having these little things in our hands and the amount of information that we can consume, and in like lightning speed, is what
Oh.
happens is we are seeing stuff oftentimes that is just put up instantly, and it only gives us one perspective, and
Hmm.
two, it can destroy and inform all at the same time. And
Hmm.
back in Johnny Carson's day, there was like that wall that kept
Hmm.
that was kept up.
Well,
That doesn't
because
exist, and that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. But
is it?
again, that's a thing, is it? But
Is it?
it could be a bad thing, right? It could be totally horrible, because what it does is it prevents us from slowing down. Remember, I mean, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
It prevents us from actually slowing down and going, wait, and asking questions. And I think, and it's a really sad commentary for our world and our country, that a man was murdered because somebody probably didn't stop and slow down and think.
Right. The so there's a couple things with that. First of all, slowing down is actually required to think. And as we said before, writing is thinking and feeling.
Right.
So people will tell you, yeah, you have to journal. And I go, well, do you have to? No, you don't have to.
No.
But journaling and doing things like daily pages and stuff like that is extremely helpful. And the
Mhm.
reason is it allows you to have conscious thought about the things that you're doing in your life. Because a lot of us are just doing things with no
Right.
conscious
Just
thought.
reacting,
We're going
reacting.
through a routine. Again, one of the books I recommend is 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. And it talks about how you only have 4,000 weeks in your life. So if you're living for the weekends, you're missing out on 5 days a week every single week, right?
Hmm.
But anyway, so that's part of it, is that thinking and feeling, because part of it is if you stop and think and feel. So I'll tell you a personal story. This is an absolute
Okay.
personal story. There are only a couple of times in my life when I have even remotely contemplated actually killing someone.
Ooh,
And one of those people was my
Sydney needs
brother.
to bleep that out.
No,
The word.
no, no,
Yeah.
no. Oh, well, maybe the word. Okay,
Yeah.
but
The word.
there are so, and if anybody's really honest with themselves, there are probably some times in your life where you felt this way. And one
Hmm.
of them was my brother. And it was a horrible time in my life. Things had happened. And my brother was involved in how those things happened to me, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't his fault, but he certainly didn't make it any better when he could have.
Hmm.
Okay. So I had a plan, right? I was going to walk up to his door because I didn't care. I'm like, at that moment, I didn't care. I'm like, if I go to jail for the rest of my life, fine, I will. I don't care. I plan to walk up to his door, take him out, take out whoever tried to stop me along the way, and then whatever happened after that happened. Didn't matter. right? I was that bad,
Wow.
that low. Except that I had time between the idea of this plan, and I'm just going to do this, and I'm just mad, and this is just a rage, and I'm just going to go do this because this is what he deserves, and that type of thing, and the actual going through with it. And what happened? Well, first of all, my brain started to think, hey, maybe spending life in prison is not
Not
all
you're
it's cracked up to be. Maybe that's not, I mean, true. You get a brand new family, you get maybe a
maybe a new
wedding.
boyfriend.
You never know. Uh, Things can go a bunch of different ways. But maybe that's not all it's cracked up to be. Second of all, I started to feel
Mhm.
like, what am I going to feel? What's the number one feeling I'm going to feel if I go through with this? And the answer is guilt and regret, right?
Mhm.
Because taking another person's life, whether you were doing it as a soldier or as a cop or in whatever circumstances, will damage you
If you have a
severely.
conscience, yes, it does.
It will damage you. Yeah, unless you're
Mhm.
psychotic, sociopathic, but we're not going to talk about mentally ill
Mhm.
people. We're talking about normal people,
Right.
right?
Normal people. Hmm.
So because a lot of times normal people, like the first time you go hunting,
Hmm.
like, and you actually kill something and you watch it die as a result of your actions,
It's
that
hard.
can be traumatic. It's hard, even if you
Hmm.
know that's a good thing. Like when I was growing up, hunting was cheap and it was a good way to get food. Now
I
it's
get
expensive
I
and
get
not
mad when
the
I see
same.
a duck hit by a car.
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
it sinks my heart.
yeah, it's like so another taking the life of another living thing is challenging for most humans with a normal reaction
Hmm.
to things, right? So it's going to damage you. And if you take the time to think and allow yourself to feel what it's going to feel like when you do something like that, then the average normal person will not. Most murders that are by normal people, not by criminals necessarily, but by normal everyday people, are impulsive things. They're not planned.
Right.
They're not, or even if they are, immediately afterwards, that person has the feelings of regret and guilt, right? That
Hmm.
is, and it's one of the things we portray this a lot in fiction, but it's absolutely true. It actually plays out in real life,
Yeah,
right?
just watch the behavior
Because
channel.
you are thinking and feeling,
And it's
because
very,
those are
very
the two things you
difficult,
need to do. When
very
you're
difficult to
going very
mask those things.
fast with
Hmm.
like social media and everything else, you don't have time to stop and think and feel. And when you don't have time for that, your brain will rush to the wrong conclusions and the
Right.
wrong ideas about people and the wrong ideas, period. Right.
Hmm.
And sometimes you'll just hold these ideas because everyone around me seems to think the same thing. And so if I'm going to fit in with them and be popular, this is something I'm going to do.
This is I gotta do.
Baloney. Okay, baloney. But so nobody is impeding your free speech in those instances, but they are impeding your free thinking because you're not exposing yourself to other opinions.
Right.
Just recently read Fahrenheit 451 again.
Yep.
God,
Love it.
love that book, right? But one of the things you see is what happens to Montag is he goes from one extreme to the other
Hmm.
without taking the time to think and feel and land in the middle.
Right.
Because where his answer was in the middle.
It was in the middle. Hmm.
His answer was not burn the rest of the world.
Hmm.
The answer was not to burn books at the behest of the government and keep people from thinking and feeling and surround them with television and noise,
Hmm.
right? So they wouldn't have time to think. That wasn't the answer, but neither was thinking and going platoon off the rails and being like, burn it all down, right?
Right.
The middle area was the place where the answer lied. But that middle area requires thinking and feeling and also empathy. And so whenever I hear people now say empathy is a weakness, I'm
Oh,
like, oh my God. Because what you're saying is that understanding where someone else is coming from is not good. Well, that's exactly what we're called to do as people, is to see where other people are coming from. Now, I'm not saying that everyone deserves your consideration or your respect
no,
necessarily.
no.
That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying you need to understand where they're coming from. It's exactly like this book that we're working on, where the guy says, "What makes this make sense?" When you look at someone and say their behavior is outrageous, but if you dig deeper, you'll start to understand why their behavior makes sense to them, because to them it doesn't seem outrageous, and that's when you can start getting to answers. It works this way everywhere, right? But
You
if
know what?
we don't think, it
It,
doesn't matter. It
it's one of
doesn't
those
matter.
things. I found it so interesting when they came out with this wave of it was actually kind of a theme kind of coming out of like the villains and the villain side of the story, right? And villains, like,
Hmm.
so I think it started with Maleficent. I think that was like kind of the first one that came out.
That's one of the popular
Yeah,
ones. Yeah.
and then it was like Cruella came out, and then like Disney was putting these out. But then there was like the Joker, and then
Hmm.
there was a couple of them, right? So, and I was like really kind of amazed. First of all, aside from the movies, which by the way, I was a huge fan of these, but aside from that, what I was fascinated with was the reaction from the people in our society. I was
Hmm.
surprised at the amount or the level of dissatisfaction and outrage at we are making villains look like good guys, and I was kind of horrified by this whole diatribe. I mean, it was kind of the same diatribe
Hmm.
we heard when Harry Potter came out. It was the same diatribe that came out like when like when it's the same thing when people read Lorax. Like, it's just dumb, it's garbage, it doesn't mean anything.
Hmm.
They're reacting, again, not thinking.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I found interesting about it is that it removed this empathy, and it failed people failed to think critically about what they were saying, because in all honesty, and it's one of my favorite things to say, is you are the villain in somebody's story. I
Hmm.
know I'm the villain, and I can list at least three people off the top of my head right now that I am like a super villain in their story.
Hmm.
And it's not my clients, believe it or not. These are
No,
I would say that one of these
no, no.
people, one or two of these people, I know for a fact would probably, if given the opportunity, would murder me. Like, I'm not kidding, and I'm not exaggerating.
Hmm.
Um, that is just probably the truth. Does that mean I'm wrong or I'm a bad guy? Or does that mean that they're a bad guy? Actually, I don't think it means either of those things. I think what it means is that
No.
there was a behavior, there was a reaction. Both of us have opposing views about that, situation. And I can coexist in a world knowing that that is just somebody that I don't have to be friends with and I don't have to cross paths with.
Well, right. And
It's
here's one thing
okay.
is we talk about we're the heroes in our own story,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it is healthy for us to flip that and to say we
Mm-hmm.
are the villains in some other people's stories. And in some cases of the people in my life that I know of, they are 100% justified in saying I'm the villain in their life
Yeah. I would probably say that
because
that's probably true too.
I did not always do good things, right? Because
Oh,
I'm imperfect.
yeah.
We are
No, mine is
imperfect
different,
as
but I can
human beings,
understand their perspective.
and the more that we can understand where someone else is coming from and
Mm-hmm.
understand their point of view, even if we don't agree with it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't agree that I am the villain in this person's story. I did not intentionally do something or whatever, you know what I mean? Or I tried to fix it or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever the case that you feel is, right? But you know you're the villain in their story. And you know that to them, they're the hero in that
Mm-hmm.
situation,
Yeah.
right? Well, neither of you is wrong. It's just a different perspective. But
Just
part
different
of it is we
perspective.
need to see our enemies as human beings. One of the
Exactly.
things like I loved about the Joker and like I love about like Dexter and Breaking Bad and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that is we see these guys that we see that they become these super terrible villains and people, but they're people first.
Yeah.
And we understand if you watch Breaking Bad, you understand how Walter White made this make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
In his life, in his mind, it made sense. And if you watch throughout the series, the problem is your mind follows his and you think it makes sense. And then there come some moments when you're like, oh my God. How did he
Yeah.
get here? From
Yeah.
where he started, how did he get here? Same thing with Dexter. That's the two of the examples that I use all the time. But I mean, I love the Joker was one of my
The Joker.
favorite movies because I'm
Hmm.
like, you see what made this person. Now, the thing is, you have to understand that there are times when I look at things and I'm like, if circumstances had been different, if I had gone down a different path, that would have been me. If I had made different choices in my life, right?
Hmm.
So that's part of it is that we have to understand that our enemies, so-called enemies, are not enemies. They're just human beings. And they've come up through life certain ways. We've come up through life certain ways. And so we come at things from opposing viewpoints and opposing points of view. But that doesn't mean that either one of us is evil or wrong. Like that's not what the point is. The
You
point
know,
is that, you can I would there are many religious people that I would sit down with and I'm happy to have a debate with them, but I know for a fact that we are not going to come to the same conclusions. But
right.
if I can make them think for just a minute
Hmm.
about some of the messaging and the way they're presenting themselves to the world and say, hey, if you did things a little differently, at least you would not be people would not see you as the bad guy and as the enemy if you approach this just a little differently. It's not that you need to change your views or your beliefs, but maybe change how you approach things, right? But if all of us could benefit from that, there's absolutely times when I'm saying things to people that I know are going to tick them off, and I'm saying them
Hmm.
anyway. You know what I mean? So anyway, so
I
it's
feel
just,
like it's just one of those things that we have to understand as we are humans and we mature. I mean, this is kind of one of those things that when I was a kid, my mom used to tell me, think before you speak, right? She used to tell me that
Mhm.
all the time. And Stacey, don't you're making that face again. Because I had no, by the way, I still am not great at this, but it's the reason why
Yeah.
you'll never meet a more honest person than me, because I cannot lie. There, you will see it on my face the second
Uh,
I try. I'm just the worst liar in the world, so I don't lie. But one of the things that I think that's interesting is when I come to an agreement with somebody, or I can look at them and they have an opposing view than I do, and I can understand that opposing view is something that I can understand and be empathetic with. That
mhm,
again doesn't mean that I have to relinquish. That doesn't mean that I have to come to their side on it. It just means that I can say, "Oh yeah, I get that. I get why you feel that way." And then I can then exist in that same sphere with that person. I think that's something I think, and I could be wrong, but from what I understood of Charlie Kirk and what I liked and admired about the guy was that he was trying to teach people to do that. One of my favorite things that I like to watch him do is he would sit in a circle. He would have a circle of people around him, and there would be a table in the center, and there was a timer, and he would like either bring up a topic or they would, and they would come to the tent at the center of the table, and they would discuss it with Charlie, and he would have these debates with them. And the
mhm,
debate was only like 2 minutes long or whatever, but it was like debate me, like let's talk about it. A lot of times, more often than I care to probably, like I care to say how many times, I don't know, but a lot of times if I go back and I'm watching these things, I'm seeing him go, I can see that you feel that way, or I can understand why you
mhm,
say that. But a lot of times, this is why I think that people were so enraged by him, is because he would throw statistics and facts and truth at people, which is one of the reasons why. And I feel like that maybe he felt like it was a bit combative, because he would do that. He would butt heads
mhm,
with people on purpose. I mean, it was kind of his thing. But I know that probably the reason that he was doing it that way is because he was wanting people to challenge him. He wanted people to
mhm,
think. And that's kind of what books do. And just to bring this full circle, and to help you understand as authors why this is an important topic, is because as an author, when you are fleshing out a story, and you were you are building up a character profile and an arc for that protagonist. Troy is always good at saying this, but your conflict is what drives a story, right? There's conflict there, and you're going to be
Mhm.
creating conflict, which is that butting up of heads. Because what that does is it causes the character to think. And what we're looking for in books is for that change, right? We're looking for
Mhm.
that character to become something. And that is not a comfortable process. That is
Oh
not
no.
comfortable. And I think that that's something that a lot of us think that life is meant to be, is it's supposed to be comfortable. And one of the things that I think that makes your life more rewarding and more important and more special is the more conflict that you have in your life that you are able to either reconcile or change yourself or others with. And that's what
Mhm.
books are, is it's causing it's a conflict that causes a character to change. And oftentimes, guys, like Troy and I were talking, is the villain has an equally important role in that change. And that
Right.
villain needs to be just as fleshed out as your protagonist in your stories, because
Mhm.
that is human. That is humanity, guys. That's
Mhm.
what we're
Well,
trying to flesh out
and
here.
oh, it's so exciting because
Yeah,
sometimes the villain changes more, as much
more.
or more as your hero. Here's the thing: we think about Lisa Cron's book that we talked about, Story
Oh
Genius, right?
yeah,
What's the
good
premise
story.
of that? Is that every character comes into any given situation, just as we as people come into almost any given situation, and you've got a misbelief, something you
Hmm.
believe that you believed your whole life, or that some event in your past or something in your past caused you to adopt and believe.
Right,
But it is wrong. It is a
right.
mistruth.
It's a
And
lie.
usually this is a big premise.
Hmm.
Like the book that I've worked on just recently for this gal, that really it's a historical fiction. It's a journey across the ocean and across the United States. But the theme of the first couple of books is that this young girl, young woman, believes that everyone in her life leaves,
Mm.
that no one stays. Now, that is wrong. And at the end of the first book, part of that is proven to be wrong because her father has gone on a
Hmm.
journey ahead of them, and she feels like he left and she will never see him again. And she gets to the United States, and where they're supposed to meet him, he is actually there. Despite
Oh,
all her misgivings, he is there. So she proves to herself, not everybody leaves. At least I can count, but then it turns to, at least I can count on my father. It
right,
doesn't That doesn't translate in her life to everyone else. She's still got a misbelief,
right.
but the misbelief has changed, has evolved, and now she has trust in at least one person, right? So sorry, Sydney, cut that out. But anyway, but that's how our misbeliefs work,
Right.
right? Now, and so I'm not saying you have to, like, I would not sit down with Hitler and sympathize with him and say,
Oh,
"Oh, I see how that makes sense to you." That's because that's someone that's evil, right? And
well, and
th
and his free speech, his speech was was inciting, and it
Mhm.
it was causing harm, right? Like your
Mhm.
your your words, and this is an interesting thing to say because I believe it both ways, but your words are just words. They don't cause physical harm unless you let them.
Mhm.
It's almost like you have to permit them to cause harm. However,
Yeah.
I will say that it can be both. Like, I don't know,
Oh,
there's a
well, and
nice little
there's
caveat there, isn't there? But I will
yeah,
say, for you
because
personally, you can choose how to react or act on the words that you hear.
right. And there is such a thing as psychological manipulation, and I don't
Right.
want to discount any of that. And there
Yeah,
are
I don't
people
want.
that are just that are very charming, that have started cults, and all of a sudden they've got 50 million people following them, and then
Mm-hmm.
everybody drinks Kool-Aid at 7, and a whole bunch of people are dead, and you go, how in the world
Right.
did that happen? Right? And it happened because of words and story that someone
But
used and manipulated
it
with in a different way.
manipulated them, right?
It
Yeah.
was psychological manipulation, which
Right.
eventually did cause harm. So I
Mm.
mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not offering an opinion about any particular person, at least at this point, right? Other
Right.
than a major historical figure like Hitler, right? So I'm not landing on either side of this political debate about what a
Or
particular
Jones.
person believed or said.
Or
Yeah.
Jonestown.
Oh yeah. Jonestown, there's some things that like,
There's some
but then there
things.
are some flip sides of that, like the incident in Waco, Texas, which
Right.
incited a whole bunch of other stuff, right?
Right.
That was an instance where, in my mind, the government overstepped its bounds, and the result of that was disastrous, not only for the people that were there, but for the
Right.
aftermath
Right.
and all the things that came out of that, and people's now lack of trust in the government to
Right.
do the responsible thing with their power, right?
Exactly.
All that type of thing, right? But the biggest point of all that is that it doesn't mean that you don't avoid manipulative speech. It doesn't mean that when that's possible, it doesn't mean that people don't use words and speech for evil purposes.
To
It
hurt.
does not
Yeah.
even mean that there are not people who are inherently evil and who are spreading poisonous messages. That's not what it means. What free speech means, is that the government does not have a right to tell them they can't say that.
Right.
You, as a human being, the reason we need critical thinking so much as a part of this free speech is that you need to evaluate the speech that you're hearing. We
Right.
need to evaluate and go, okay, CNN leans this way, Fox News leans this way. We need to find some way to find out the truth that's in the middle with some unbiased reporting,
Right.
which is the most common place you're going to find that nowadays is on YouTube, honestly.
Or yeah, or
Because,
there are some unbiased news sources out there. I know that All Sides is really trying really hard. Again, it's a subscription funded,
Mhm. But
because
yeah,
they, but you have to have that. But there are lots of
yeah.
news, like News Nation, I know is trying. There's news sources out there that are doing their best. But one of the things that I think my aunt kind of has a really good way about doing this, and that's she just watches like 4 or 5 different news sources, and she sees where
Mhm.
the she kind of Venn diagrams it in her head. She
Yeah,
kind of
see
like,
where
okay,
there's an overlap.
where's the
Where's
overlap,
there an
and where
overlap?
that's where the truth
Yeah.
is. Because it's true about everything, like everything that you do in this life. Books are meant, my dogs are upset, somebody just came home. The truth is meant for you to find, because the truth is for you, your truth. And that's just the way it works. Like, our perspectives are the driving force of our reality. And like, the only way that you are going to be able to fully flesh out who you are and what role you have in this life is to actually be able to think about what these things mean to you, not what they mean for other people, but what they mean to you. Why do you feel that way? Why does this chap your ass? Why are you so
Hmm.
up in arms about this? Why are you outraged? What does this have to do with you? And if you can't answer that question, if you're saying it's because of so and so or so and so, and you're pointing fingers at other people, then maybe you shouldn't be so upset about it. Maybe you should come down off the ledge a
Yeah,
little
I
bit.
mean, and there are legitimate things we should be upset
We
about,
could be upset about,
genocide, things like
yeah,
that, right?
but
Those things are
what I
things,
mean is
but
like,
well, and part
don't
of it
get
is
so
like,
outraged about some,
well, something
some
that's
willy that has no consequence to you or anybody really.
that's
um
out of your control
that's out of
too.
your
Is
control.
the other aspect.
Yeah.
Because so here's the thing, like you can be outraged. I mean, but outraged, I think, is the wrong
I
response.
think,
Like,
yeah.
if
Can you
if
just be
our
mad?
job
Can you be
is
just
to show well, if our job is to show kindness to people, and we see someone else being unkind to people in a situation where we feel like they should be kind, The solution is for us to offer whatever kindness we can into that situation,
Mm-hmm.
not to be outraged at the other person because they're going to pay their own consequences, right? They're going to have their own thing. And the problem is you can't save the world. You're
Right.
not Superman. You can't zoom around the world and show kindness to everyone. You can show kindness to those that are within your circle and within your arm's reach. And those are the circumstances that I can impact, is those that are closest to me and within my arm's reach. But I can't, as much as I might be outraged that children in this other country are starving, I might be able to send money if I can afford it to that country. If I'm wealthy, I might even be able to fly to that country and do something there. If I'm wealthier still, I might be able to just send whole plane loads full of food to that
I
country.
got an
But
idea.
there's infrastructure that it has to be in place for that food to actually get to those people. You know what I mean? Like there are things you just cannot do, but
How
you
about this?
can be kind to those around you. That works.
Exactly. That's my point. It's like, okay, let's think about this. My father, bless his pea picking heart, he loves to sit and stare at the news all day long. And he is
Oh,
really,
no.
really good at outrage. Like he's really good at it. And sometimes like it's gotten to the point where it's come between our relationship because
Yeah.
I have a hard time having conversations with my dad just about everyday things because he goes default
You
to
should get him a
outrage.
cape for
Yeah.
his birthday because he's
Yeah.
super mad.
He's super mad.
Anyway,
So
anyway, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
get really frustrated with it, right? So one of the things that I've told him is like that, and I tell people this all the time though, is that I live in a bubble, and the bubble, it's not a bubble that just reflects my own opinions or the shared opinions that I have. It's not that. What it is, it's a bubble of influence. I call it a
Hmm.
bubble of influence. It's the people that live inside of my bubble are my immediate family and friends, those people that I allow to have their bubble bump against mine and merge with my bubble to become a bigger bubble, right? So I have
Hmm.
people in that bubble. What I mean by that is that when my life, the critical parts of my life, the like right now I'm in the middle of Hell Week and I've got like my son getting married this Friday and it's kind of messing with my head. And like the people that are in my bubble right now are my clients, like that I'm trying to get all their work done. And at the same time, my son who wants his mother to be present for his wedding. Right. And I'm
Hmm.
sitting here trying to think, I'm like balancing, I'm juggling cats, but I'm in this bubble and I'm trying to make sure that my bubble of influence um, stays manageable. This whole thing with the outrage of the world right now and the chaos that's going on, it's outside of my bubble of influence. There's nothing I can do to control it. And there's nothing I can do today to change things. However, if I was on a subway going down the road or, going down to my next stop and I saw somebody in peril, I would do everything I could to help that person in that moment because in that moment, that person's in my bubble. And this is the part that I kind of get, I wish that all of us would do is the empathy and the social numbness, like Montag
Hmm.
noticed in Fahrenheit 451,
Hmm.
is so bad that when a girl can get stabbed on the subway and people just don't even look at her to help her. They don't even look at her to help her and
Hmm.
she dies on a subway, you know, that is numbness, guys. That is numb.
Hmm.
And that is not where we should be. So let your bubbles,
Hmm.
feel out your bubble, feel out what it is. You don't have to be so outraged about the political climate in such a way that it completely damages your relationships with your family, your job. Like people are losing their jobs left and right because they're saying and doing stupid things. For what? For
Oh
people
God.
that they don't even know. Like, what are you guys doing? Use your brain, stop, think, and then just keep your bubble. And when you're on these places where your bubble beneficially can help other people, then be the empathetic person that that no matter who you believe in, what you believe in, God, karma, just being a good human, like you can be that good human. You can be the
Yeah.
one that you're trying to get everybody else to be. And instead of being outraged that nobody else is being that good human, just be the good human.
Right.
And those
Exactly.
and those of you who are writing these stories, remember that you can write these same things. And I want you to stop and think in your writing, like really think through the conflicts, think about what a human would actually do. Guys, it's not about the plot, it's about the people. People read stories for the people, they're not reading them for the plot. just
Hmm.
just that's just the facts. So when you're writing your stories, keep that in mind, that these things that outrage you, these things that make you angry, write about them. Write about them,
Hmm.
but write about them from your perspective. And remember that you're writing to change somebody or something. You're not going to be writing to
Right.
people. Like, your characters need to go through this arc, they have to change. So if you want to invoke change and you want to see a change in somebody else, write about that and what that would take, and think that through and understand that
Yeah.
about that person.
Oh, there's only one caution about that, and one thing that I want to say before we wrap things up. But first of all, the caution thing about that is don't write because you have a particular message.
Oh
Write the
yeah,
story that
no,
needs
write
to
the
be written,
story. Right.
and the characters that come to you. Now, the truth is, if you're passionate about certain things, those are the type of characters that are going to come to you, and that's the way the
Mm-hmm.
story works. And that goes back to that woo-woo part of writing, which we could talk
Mm-hmm.
even more about on another episode, and how things channel to you, and where do you those stories come from, and then where do you get them, and how do you get in the zone, and all that kind of stuff, right? But not to go down that route too far. But the thing is, like, don't try to think through the message. Write the
No,
character,
write the
write the
character,
character and their
write the
change.
change.
But here's the things to do, because as an author, the one thing that you can do with your books and stories is that you can expand that bubble of influence, because
Mm-hmm.
you can change. Because here's the deal, like Michael Evans always said, it says storytellers rule the world. Like I always
Mm-hmm.
say, the way we learn to interact with the world is through stories. This is why writing is so important. And this is why what we talked about a few weeks ago is also so important, is I want you to slow down, not slow down so much that you're writing one novel every 5 years and all that kind
Oh,
of stuff.
please don't do
I
that.
don't I don't want that. First of all, that creates problems of its own. That's too slow. But
Mm-hmm.
I do want you to slow down and do two things. Slow down, think and feel, and
Mm-hmm.
then very simply be kind to one another.
Right.
I've seen in the last week, I have seen authors be nasty to each
Mm.
other. I have seen an author that said some things in a social media post that I would never say, and that likely that person would never say to someone in person.
Right.
Right. And all it did to me was I looked at that person and I said, I will never work with them again. Not because I'm mad at them, not because I'm angry at them, but because they have no right to be unkind to
Mm-hmm.
other people in that particular circumstance. We're all colleagues. We're all on this planet together, racing around the sun at however many thousands of miles per hour or whatever the hell. And we're all doing the same thing, right? So there's no reason to be unkind. So within your circle, what you're able to be kind. If you want to have opinions about things, if you want to be upset about things,
That's, yeah,
absolutely knock
fine.
yourself out.
But
But
talk
just
about it.
talk about it, number one, and number two, understand that there's certain things about that there's nothing you can do about. But what you can do something about is those things that are in your circle. And as a writer, you can expand your circle,
Mm-hmm.
and you can talk about things in a way and reach people in a way that many, many other people cannot. So use that power for good, not evil. Use that
Mm-hmm.
power of influence for good, not evil. But slow down, think, feel, and be kind to each other.
Be kind.
That's it.
I I love it. I think that's a very powerful message. One of the things that I think that people should really understand and get out of this, like I said, is one, just the empathy and understanding that we're all in this big world together. We all have differing opinions. Like I said, I started following about 15 to 20 different people from different walks of life, and my algorithm is so jacked up right now. I love it so much. There's so much wild stuff coming in my algorithm right now. And it makes me so happy because
Hmm.
it's not the same thing that I see all the time. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that the algorithm should be jacked up every so often. Um,
Hmm.
thank the maker. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm recording with Troy. Like my son comes in and
Yeah. I thought it was
yeah,
Satan there for a minute. I
Satan,
was
yeah, Beelzebub.
Beelzebub.
Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
but
yes.
anyway, yeah, I love it. I think this was a great discussion. I hope that it's opened some eyes. I hope it's softened some hearts. I hope we're not just uh I hope you and I are a good example to people, Troy, that we can have
Man,
different opinions about
I
different
hope
things and
so.
still be besties. Cause like honestly,
Uh,
I want people to know publicly I love this man. He's an amazing human. He cares immensely for his work, and that to me deserves respect. And I love the experiences you've been through. It's amazing. And I would
yes.
never
Oh.
trade our relationship for anything. But I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like too many people they forget and they shut down relationships just because of those differences, and you shouldn't. I don't think you should
Yeah.
ever do that. I think that
No, I think
let's talk about
that
them.
that's a loss. That's a loss. And
It's a loss.
I absolutely love you, and I absolutely
Oh.
love there are I I have some of my very conservative friends who I went to school
Hmm.
with. Some of them are pastors, and I
Hmm.
love them, and I love
Hmm.
seeing their little Facebook posts with the little words and the little numbers and a colon and some other numbers that mean something to them. That's wonderful. Keep that up, guys. That's great. And I have some very liberal friends who
Me
are
too.
so far on the other side of the spectrum but it doesn't matter to me because what
Mm-mm.
matters to me is who you are as a human being and
Relationships,
the
right,
way you live your
guys?
life and your relationships.
Right.
And
When you're
that's what
kind to
matters to me.
people, that's what matters.
Um, yeah.
So yeah, that's the rule here, guys. Write great stories. Change the world, change your characters, make them go through some hard stuff. It's amazing. That makes life better. Gosh,
Hmm.
these guys that climb mountains, they don't climb the mountains because they're easy people. They climb the mountains because they're there and they're difficult. And dude, just do
Yeah.
that. Climb the mountains. But understand and know that lots of us are afraid of heights and we're not going to climb the mountains. We're just going to read about your experience.
Well, just think about the fact that every dead body on Everest was once a very motivated person. So
Yeah, there we
maybe
go.
maybe relax a little.
Maybe,
Anyway,
yeah, I
whatever.
don't know.
But you know,
Gosh, I find it awe inspiring some of the things that people do,
but yeah.
yeah, again, it's one of those things I can respect and I can love what they do and understand that and know fully that that's not something I'm ever going to embrace, but it's definitely something that I can look at them and go, "Oh, that's amazing."
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. We read books for those experiences, guys. So keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. And we'll talk next week, hopefully on a much lighter subject. Hopefully there's something a
Mm.
little more positive going on in the
Yeah.
world that we can get excited about. But next week I'm going to be the
Yeah.
mother-in-law to two people.
Oh, that's scary. I know.
Villain,
Crazy.
villain. I'm going to be the
And then
villain.
in a couple weeks, within a couple next 2, 3 weeks, we'll try to have Tara from Develio on and talk to
Oh
her
yeah, let's
about
do that.
yes.
Novelio, because I haven't seen her since Storymakers, so I would love to
Yeah.
talk to her. She's
Oh, and
amazing.
great things are happening. It is so freaking cool.
Okay,
Anyway,
awesome. Let's bring
yeah.
her on. But yeah, and then we're getting ready, we're getting geared up, a couple months now away from Author Nation. And I hope that I mean, if you're
Hmm.
gonna be an Author
Oh,
Nation, let us know. I'm so excited. I want to meet up
yeah.
with some
And
people.
quick commercial. I know how close this is to Author Nation because I'm experiencing it myself. But my
Oh
friend
yeah.
Nick Nelson and I are doing a
Yes.
writer's retreat in Tahoe. There are a few spaces still left. So if you want to join us in
Oh, I'll put the
Tahoe,
link in description.
yes, link in the description. Message Nick or message myself if you want to have questions about anything, want to talk about anything. If finances are a factor, something like that, let us know, and we are happy to talk that through with you and see what we can do. See what we can do to make that work for you. I know it's very close to Author Nation, so if you're going to Author Nation too, coming to this could be a challenge. Hey, I'm right there with
But
you. Because we're closing on a house at the same time, so it's going to be a very exciting time in my life.
wow,
But
you guys.
yeah. Anyway, so but yeah, so if you're interested in that, please do drop us a line. We have a few spots left. It'd be fantastic to have you guys there. So
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Well, everybody, thanks again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Have an awesome week. Thanks, everyone.